Okay. Good evening, everyone. The Ferguson City Council special meeting is now called to order. Clerk Pittman, would you please call the roll?
Councilman Fry,
Here.
Councilwoman Griffin,
Here.
Councilwoman Burrow,
Here.
Councilwoman Robinette,
Here.
Mayor Jones,
Here.
Councilwoman Lipka,
Here.
Councilman Garrett.
Here.
All right, a quorum is present. At this time, we'll have an introduction by interim city manager Jeff Bloom.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Mayor and Council, as I'm often fond of doing, I'm going to give you just a quick quote. And that is, I want to say it was Galileo who once said, "If I have achieved anything, it is because I have stood on the backs of giants." And that's what this process and this program is. And we as a city have taken a couple of different iterations at housing, and this is one of those iterations. We think that we're a lot closer to not perfection, but a much higher standard. And so that is why you've gotten a whole packet. And I know it was a lot to read. And so I'm hoping that Bailey can shed some light on it for us and give us some things to think about and give you some insight as to how we got where we are today. So I'm going to ask Bailey to start, please, sir.
All right. Thank you, Jeff. Mayor Jones, council members, thank you for taking the time to be here. Octavia, is there any way I can share my screen?
You should be able to now.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you. All right. So I want to thank everyone for being here again. My plan is to keep the presentation under 20 minutes. So we have plenty of time for questions at the end. So if you can, just please keep questions until the end. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you have there. In the meantime, the property restoration program is what we're all here to talk about tonight. So the property restoration program gives individuals and qualified developers the opportunity to redevelop land that is on the post-third property or post-third tax sale list in the St. Louis County. So if you don't know what the post-third tax sale list is, it is basically where properties are, they owe back taxes or taxes, and they go to auction multiple times. And then after the third time, they're put on this list. And basically anyone, any Missouri resident can put a bid on these properties. As long as it's over the owed taxes, they would be able to acquire the property. So we're able to acquire the property through this process as well. With that, the goals of the program are as follows. We developed the program with these in mind. So to decrease the number of vacant properties within the city, first and foremost, improve the quality of residential and commercial properties, increase the percentage of homeowners, and increase affordable housing within the city. So with that in mind, what does it look like to go through the process of applying for a property through this program? And what criteria do we look at as staff when we go through the applications? This program actually has two different tracks, one for developers who are looking to redevelop properties, multiple properties, so more than one property. And then we also have a process for individuals who would like to acquire one property and own and occupy that property. So Both of the processes share the application process that I'm about to share. This process is similar between both of them. So let's go through that now. It starts with an application, obviously. So once they submit the application to the city, we will review that. Staff will review that. And again, I'll go over the criteria here in a moment. Once we approve the application, we will meet with the applicant and draft a redevelopment agreement, which is basically a contract. It is exactly a contract with the city. And in that contract, will outline exactly, it'll include the redevelopment plan and outline every step of the process. So we have included a draft redevelopment agreement in the packet for you guys tonight. So you can view that as well. So once we meet with the individual or developer, and finalize the contract, we would go to the council at the next council meeting. They would review, or you guys would review, and then from there, decide if we want to move forward or not. And once we approve that, we go to acquire the property through the post-third process. Once that is done, I guess we acquire the property if we don't own it already, because there are a few properties that we do own. So we do have that on there as well. But once we acquire the property, we go into this process, or we have two quitclaim deeds that are signed. One that is basically gives the owner or the applicant ownership of the property, and then that quitclaim deed will be recorded with the county recorder, and then the second quitclaim deed is signed to give ownership to the city, and this quitclaim deed is kept on file with the city. In the event that the redevelopment agreement is defaulted, or there's any issues within that, the city can then record that with the county to reclaim the property if any problems arise and the need comes up. So with that, from there, the individual or developer can then begin the redevelopment process. And then they can also begin the process of clearing the title of any liens that they have on the property, and then through a title clearing company. And also from there, they would, excuse me. From there, that process takes a while, so they want to make sure they start it then. So what criteria does staff look at for approving the applications? We start with the financial viability of the project, looking at credit statements, the project budget that is required with the application, and then any funds or loan commitments that the individual or developer is able to obtain. We'll need to review the proof of that as well. And we also look at the site plans to see the exact improvements that are being made and whether or not they meet the basic building codes in the city and the building standards set forth. And then we also, with the developers, look at any prior projects that they've done in rehabilitating homes, basically any similar projects they've done. They can submit as many as they want, but we require 3. So, and that we would also ask the individuals to do that, but not every person has experience in doing something like this, or major renovations to homes that have been vacant for a while. So with that, I'm going to now show you the process map of that exact process that I just walked you through. So this is included in the application for the owner occupant process. It's the first thing they'll see, and it really breaks it down and allows people to see exactly where the steps along the way. And if there are any questions, my contact information is on the next page. So it's right there for them. And I just included this just as a visual representation of that process that I just walked you through. So what is the difference between the owner occupant process and the developer process? Well, the developer has to qualify first. So they'll have a prerequisite of qualifying before going through that application process. And it starts with a qualification packet being submitted to the city. And so staff will review again the financial history, which includes 3 years of financial statements. And then we'll also look at, as I mentioned, 3 projects that they've worked on in the past that are similar. And then along with that, we ask them to submit a property interest form, which just allows us to look at the properties they're interested in potentially applying for in the application process. So if they're approved, they're added to a qualified developer list. From there, we basically make sure every time they apply, we make sure they're in good standing with the state and the county and with us as well. And we will also ask that developers qualify every calendar year. So there's just an updated financial history. And maybe they did projects outside of the city of Ferguson that they want to make us aware of that also continues to increase their standing as a qualified developer. So obviously from there, if they're approved, they can proceed to apply for any property through the application process I just explained. And the reasoning we have this qualification step is starting with the properties themselves. We have a list of 300 properties in Ferguson that are vacant. 200 of them are either on the post third list or owned by the city. So we have quite a hefty list to go through already. This gives us basically an idea. The developers know the properties pretty well. They go around and look at them. So they'll know really which ones are in better shape than others. So this gives us an idea of which ones may be able to be redeveloped and which ones we might need to acquire for demolition. So that also is my next point is we already do this. We demolish some properties every year. So we basically just narrow down the list and makes it easier for us to make sure we're demolishing only the properties that have no other option. So, and again, creates a list of qualified developers, make sure that the city's not putting any risk on maybe some developers that can't handle certain aspects of redeveloping properties. And with that, it also kind of streamlines the application process instead of having all this financial information given to us at every single application that they submit for every single property that they want to develop. Just one time a year, and allows us to revisit it every time, every year instead of every single application. So this is, again, that just a visual representation and the just the process map of the developer process. The qualification process, step 1, is what I just outlined. So that blue area right there. And then the orange area is the application process that I went through at the beginning. So with that, I want to give a shout out to the FNIP board for beginning the process of this program and just really getting the ball rolling in terms of where we are today. So that's really all I have in the presentation. So I want to again thank you for your guys' time and open the floor to questions now.
I had a question. This is Fran. Hi, Bailey.
Hi, Fran.
I had a question because I was looking up, so you've got two different processes, one for developers, and you mentioned one for individuals. And I had a question specifically about the one for the individual because it said, you mentioned that these are for, the developers are for people that are purchasing more than one property, and the individuals are for those that are purchasing one property and they intend to own and occupy.
Yeah.
And my question is in regards to, what if you have someone who wants to become a landlord and they don't want to live on the property, but they do want to be able to purchase one home because maybe they are not a developer, maybe they're just a family who wants to create some additional revenue in terms of being able to purchase, renew, redevelop, and rent out a house. That kind of blocks that particular family from being able to do it? Or is it that they just want to own? They have to, why is it that they have to occupy it?
So that kind of goes back to one of the goals of the program is to increase owner occupancy in the city. And it's not that we don't necessarily want to explore that option in the future. I mean, that could be added in maybe, but I don't think that the goal of having owner occupancy would really be achieved if we allowed that.
I would also add that we have quite a bit of rental properties as it stands right now. We need to develop a home ownership for so many reasons, but most of all to create grassroots foundation to this community for its future growth and
Right.
potential. That being said, I do have two questions. Unless you're done, I apologize if you're.
I actually did, because I did have another question too.
Go right ahead.
But I don't want to go through the whole thing. I just wanted to start at the beginning, and then definitely I want Linda, you to be able to ask your questions. But it goes back, if that is the point, if the whole goal of the program is to increase owner occupancy, then when developers are having more than one property that they are redeveloping, are they going to, are we stating that they should only be able to sell those houses in the contract? Or are we saying that you're the owner, you're the developer, but we're going to allow you to rent? Like, is that going to be stated that they are not going to be able to rent these properties, these multiple properties that we're allowing them to purchase, renovate, and prepare for home ownership?
So it's not that. So I guess I kind of misspoke earlier. I'm not saying that it's that we can't put in this scenario that you're painting. I'm not saying that it's not possible for a family who's looking to rent one property or what have you. I would just say that they're probably going to have to go through the developer process. If they haven't done something like this before, then it doesn't seem to me that they would be a really good candidate to be renting out a property to begin with. And it's really hard for us to put the risk on the city through this process and allow something like that to, I guess, continue. And in terms of your question about the developers being required to sell the property, it's not that we're requiring them to sell the property, but that can be added to the redevelopment agreement. And to add to that point, there is a process that this hasn't been brought up yet, but if multiple people are interested in the same property, we're going to weigh more heavily the owner occupant I guess option. So if two developers or three developers and one person or one individual, we might ask them, it's on the application, they can even state that they're going to put in the redevelopment agreement that they're willing to sell it rather than rent it out, because obviously some of these developers are going to want to rent it rather than flip it and sell it. So yeah, it's a part of the redevelopment agreement process when we sit down with the applicant and see what their intentions are with the property. And that also can be captured in the application itself too.
Bailey, if I remember correctly, during the FNIP initial conversations about this, which this all came up and it was discussed very heavily and intensely, what we ended up coming down to, and you can just, clarify or disagree, agree with me, whatever, any development designed for a profit. So if you're buying this home to sell it, if you're buying this home to rent it, if any development designed for profit goes through the developer chain. Any development designed for home ownership goes through the individual chain. So that was the distinguishing factor. If you are looking to make money, income, profit, it goes through the developer's side.
Okay, so then it should be under developers. It shouldn't state that it should be more than one property. It should be one or more. If
Yeah, I think so. What I want to say, I agree with what Linda's saying. It is very, it is, you can make that distinction. It is really whether or not you're utilizing the property for profit or not, I guess.
right. So in that case, like if it was the family that I was just mentioning that was interested in making additional revenue for themselves, and they would have to go through the developing process versus the individual, they could then do so. So it will
Right.
be just one or more properties, correct, for the development, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And
Um,
then,
Go ahead.
I'll wait. Go ahead, go ahead, Linda. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, the two questions that I have for you, Bailey, is something that was brought to me by some citizens that I thought was a phenomenal idea, and we never discussed it in FNIP. So I'm pretty sure you guys I haven't seen anything in your paperwork. But what about putting in a piece in there that incentivizes developers to develop handicap accessible homes so that we can start offering? And I think too, if we have an incentivized program, maybe an offshoot program that develops handicap accessible homes, we are now opening developers up to maybe some potential grants, some potential assistance from different organizations that we as the city can either participate in, direct to, or actually facilitate. So that's something that I want to throw on your plate and ask you to consider and maybe look into putting that in there. Because when we're developing this grassroots foundation of our community, we want to bring in people of all walks of life. We want to make this appealing to people of all walks of life. And I mean, we're already the tree friendly city. If we can be handicap accessible friendly, that would be awesome. The other piece I didn't see in there that we talked very heavily on through the FNIP conversations was on the development for personal home ownership. Can we mute that? So the other. So can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. The other question, the other piece I had, which we worked on very heavily in FNIP, was creating, once you're developing home ownership, and a lot of these home ownership opportunities that we're trying to create are going to establish first-time homeowners. turning renters into homeowners and that kind of thing. But if you've been in a renter mind capacity for a long time and jumping into a homeownership mind capacity, it's a whole nother game. And so with FNIP, our discussion, and you remember, Bailey, you came in on the tail end of this because we were doing it with Kelly. Our discussion was very intently on homeownership education on maintenance of homes, homeowner education on the finance of homes. And we were working with different banks to, we were getting input and presentations from different banks that were coming in and presenting to us all these different loan programs that they were going to put together just for Ferguson residents. I know Ella was working on it on her end as well. So we were actually parallel and didn't even know it. But I know Ella's had some very great conversations with banks. I've had some great conversations through FNIP with banks. And we even had one bank that had this awesome program where a little portion of your monthly mortgage went into a savings account and you were able to reach into it when you had to do a home repair. So my question is, and it was touchy then, it's still touchy now, but how or are we going to look into creating home ownership education with home maintenance, monthly, daily, yearly, saving for a roof, saving for a water heater, that kind of thing? I turn it over to you for an answer.
Yeah, so I think that's something that FNIP should really spearhead. To be honest, it is something that I have thought of recently with the passage of our comprehensive plan. I've been looking through the implementation matrix specifically. It has quite a bit of the same goals as this program and many of the things you just talked about, and the things that FNIP I think should be looking into are also, it's outlined, the consultants did a really good job of suggesting who should go through that. So whether it should be the cities leading it or the FNIP or some other partnering organizations. So I do think that that's a huge opportunity for FNIP. And I'm glad to help you guys with that as well. So I think it's a great idea.
Is that something we want to tie into this development program restoration program though? Or do we want to keep that? What are you leaning toward? Are you leaning toward that being an end piece to the homeowner? Or are we leaning toward that being an addendum piece once they become a homeowner?
So, I mean, I don't know if it's something we need to necessarily add into this program, but rather something that like just resources being available for new homeowners. And it'll benefit not just people within this program, but also people outside of the program who are first-time homeowners or maybe not even first-time homeowners. People who have owned homes might not even know how to winterize your home, things like that. So it's something that we can definitely look into putting together resources and utilizing like our website and things like that. And maybe even FNIP can fund putting together like printed resources. The city can also probably help with that. I mean, really the ideas are endless, I think, with that.
Okay.
Okay, Stephen.
On that note, wherever that ball goes court-wise, Beyond Housing, which I believe has a facility in South Berkeley, something like that, they have those resources already, so that would be a good collaborative opportunity, especially as we move into awareness parts for this.
Yeah.
That's also, if we can facilitate that properly, that might be an opportunity for first-time homeowners to work with their grant program. And if we can be a funnel for that, that might give us some incentives and the developers incentives to design to Beyond Housing standards.
Isn't Beyond Housing, when they give you a grant, correct me if I'm wrong, you never own the property, you own the property, you don't own the land that the property. That's what it is. You don't own, you own the house, but you don't own the land. That's the thing with beyond housing, where people have been trying to steer away from that concept. But in addition to that, like Linda said, there are a lot of banks out here. I've been talking to them, Linda been talking to them. When you get a person in this restoration program, they can go make a loan. It becomes their construction loan. And therefore, they only pay that construction loan. They don't have a house payment. And a lot of banks are willing to do that for first-time homeowners. Also put them in an educational process as to what happens when the furnace go out or the grass. It's just getting with those banks that offer that type of loan for first-time homeowners.
Does the Urban League also, I believe, has some sort of housing program as well, resources available on, I was looking into their website too. I think they have some resources available too.
They do. I sit on the Urban League's task force, the housing task force, and they have an educational program. Before you even think about buying a home, they ask you to take this series of classes. And in addition to that, they have banks available. They have real estate companies available that can help you step by step to get you to help you to be a first-time homeowner.
I had one question that was more related to the program. Is there already an awareness campaign or some kind of like continuous marketing set up for this? As good as the program can be, if we don't have participants in it, that comes a struggle.
Yeah, so that's something I just thought of with all the points being made. We can definitely, I think, sending these things out to like all the partners that were mentioned, Beyond Housing, Urban League, the banks even, getting them aware of the program. I think they can also help us with some of the marketing. But putting it on our Facebook is something that I'm going to do. I've already reached out to everyone who expressed interest in the program throughout its development. As mentioned, it's been in development for quite a while. So there's already some awareness there because of the anticipation of the program. But yeah, I don't have details set on that, but we have several new newspapers coming out in the city as well. So we'll be sure to reach out to them as soon as we can. So.
Bailey, this is Tony. Hello. I just want to let you know this is very helpful. I've gotten numerous calls, and the questions that Linda has brought up is the mainstream of those questions. So I appreciate the thoroughness that you're doing. I do want to mention to you that I have given out some advice to my constituents that have been calling me. It's a good thing to get ahead of the game. And with the information that you have put together, if that could be a packet that somebody could pick up, that would be great, because later on what's going to happen is there's going to be some questions that took place tonight and nobody's taking notes to actually have it for the constituents. So I would advise you to do that. I have talked to a couple of banks about this, and there is also a program that at the US Bank, I spoke with them. It is good to sit down and take a look at what your financial situation is. And they have those type of things available. I am going to be talking to them further about having some classes for our citizens that want to go through that. So if you would work with me as I work with a couple of these banks to talk about what we need to tell our citizens that they need to do to get their credit straight. Just because you have a situation on your credit score doesn't mean that you're not going to be able to get the credit that you need. So I appreciate the hard work, top job. And if we can get together, so I have at least about 10 or 12 constituents that I need to get back with.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to follow up with anything. I will definitely put together notes on all the questions and answers tonight as well. So,
Heather?
Yeah, so in the the application process where you're looking at financials, is there anything that you're looking at with regard to how businesses were impacted due to COVID? Because I think there are a lot of financial situations that this past year look very different than years before, and I would hate to rule someone out just because of the current circumstances.
Yeah, and that's really why we want to see 3 years. That way we can see
Okay.
the picture. And I mean, I've been telling people too. I've been dealing with our business grant intake as well. So all of those applications coming in, I've been looking at those things and asking them, basically just telling people the more information you can give us, the better, because then it paints the full picture and we can really begin to see what's going on. And so the 3 years really basically
Okay.
gives us the full picture.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other further
Bailey,
questions
it's
for
Fran. I
Bailey?
had another.
Go ahead.
Yes, it's Fran. I had another question. So I'm Bailey, can you explain to me what would be the benefits of a developer or an individual going through the city of Ferguson versus going through St. Louis County's third party? Like, is there, or what are the incentives that we as a city can offer folks to say, hey, you should go, you know, go through this process with us because it's more streamlined, because it's more, you know, you will get these type of incentives? Like, what is it that's going to encourage someone to go through us versus going through St. Louis County?
Yeah, so I mean, the biggest benefit is the taxes that are owed on the property. Whenever we acquire the property, we don't owe the taxes. So those are essentially wiped clean. And so any liens that are on the property, that would be basically what remains outside of taxes. So they would have to get that cleared through the title clearing process with a title clearing company. We've gone through the process of doing that in the past. So I mean, through that experience, I've heard that it's around $1,500 to do that. And that's what I've heard on average, but it varies. Some are a lot more expensive than that, and some may be less than that. So really the incentive is basically, some of these properties have almost $100,000, I mean, tens of thousands of dollars of back taxes that are owed on them. The ones that have been sitting vacant longer have a lot more. So so it goes from tens of thousands of dollars to $1,500 just by going through us to do that. So that's really the main incentive.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any more questions? Linda,
Yes, ma'am.
do you have any questions? Any more questions?
I thought you guys would appreciate the silence from me right now.
No.
You just heard
Okay.
some papers.
No, I'm totally fine, and I appreciate the answers that I received. And I would ask you just to follow through with me on the handicap accessible aspect. And I'd like to thank the citizens that brought that up to my attention.
One more question, Bailey. When do you think you could have that packet available to give for the citizens to have?
So in terms of what do you envision being in the packet? Because I mean, I'm fine with putting together a question and answer type thing, the presentation from tonight as well. But what else? I mean, what all?
That's basically what I think they're going to need. Anything else would come from at the conversation that we might have in regards to acquiring some funds through banks or through lending
Mhm.
property. Okay, and I think that's just a list that we could give them of potentials.
Yeah.
I think anything that we can give that will keep them from feeling like, oh, it's not worth my time or it's too exhausting. Uh, let's talk about it. I'll run a checklist, and then we can share and see what's not necessary, because a lot of it would be in what you've already done tonight. So hopefully, I'm just looking for a basic time frame for those that are on the call and for those that I'll be talking to tomorrow.
So, I mean, I can put together the questions and answers and the presentation from tonight pretty quickly. That can be essentially tomorrow. In terms of the banks and things like that, I welcome people, any council members, Mayor Jones, anyone who has those materials already, please send them to me. I am also going to suggest FNIP really begin doing this throughout that. So we're going, I can reach out to them. They're going to meet next month. So I think getting that done in terms of like a very comprehensive packet, I think it's going to take a little bit more time for that to be put.
No, I'm just looking for something basic. I don't know if Attorney Kerry wants to talk in on what we're talking about. So maybe that might add some light to it too. I'm just looking for something that they can have in their hands and look over now, so that if they wanted to go by and look at these houses or whatever they want to do, at least they got something in their hands. So you're talking, if you say pretty quickly, you're talking about a week or two, maybe this week even. What I'm not trying to nail you down, just want to get a feel for what.
The information is out on the website currently.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah, I get that. And as much information is out on the website, we still have to have this meeting tonight. And so basically, I've found that if people have something in their hand and can pick up, and some people don't have the capability of printing and all of that. So something very generic that they can have in their hand, I think would be useful.
I put together, if you can see this, I put together a little material for
Beautiful.
the program.
Tripo.
Yeah, it's just a little thing. I can print these and have them in City Hall this week as well. I was planning on doing that. So
Wonderful.
yeah.
Okay, Apollo.
I was just gonna add that, whatever you distribute now, or whatever you're planning on putting together quickly for the council, if it's not already something that we're already advertising, then we may want to adjust the language to just because, it sounds like we're making some adjustments to the program.
Mm-hmm.
Thought is, whatever you put together, let's let the folks know that, it's subject to change, or that it's a proposal of something of that nature. So
Right.
Yeah.
we make the changes that the council wants to make, and they say, okay, finally, once we get it in final form, at that point, then it's good to go. But certainly if the council wishes to get something out as quickly as possible, that's good to do, but we just want to make sure we mark it so that the public knows, subject to change, whatever.
Yeah, I would almost be hesitant to print anything until it's finalized, because we don't want to send out mixed messages especially if the process is pretty thorough and explanatory in the what we distribute to the people. So I would suggest, waiting until that final wordage is there, and then you can print off as much as you need to, and we can distribute it as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with that. I'm just,
Right.
If you guys decide you're ready to put something out, mark it. But if you're not, that's fine too.
I did get a question. Someone asked, does this process also apply to vacant lots?
Yes. So
Okay.
many of the properties that the city already owns are actually vacant lots. We've acquired them and demolished those structures. So.
Okay.
So
Alrighty.
they're on the list, and yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Byron.
I have one quick question, but the FEMA land is still off limits?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
It's a floodplain.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
Any
Makes
more
it
questions?
cool.
I don't have a question, but I did want to say one other thing that we've been talking about. And that is, remember that I said that this is an iterative process. It goes in steps. And we had some real challenges in terms of sequencing those steps, if you will. And we chose to work on this because it's more of an outward manifestation and more quickly. That doesn't sound right. More quickly. It puts resources in people's hands, and that was important. But we also want to make the point that we're working with code, building code from 2006. Currently, St. Louis County is using the 2015 code, and just recently there was released a 2018 code that, to the best of my knowledge, no one locally is using, because pretty much everybody follows the St. Louis County. So the next thing that we're actually going to be looking at doing with some quickness is to then upgrade the code from 2006 to 2015. Because frankly, the 2006 code, while it was great in 2006, it lags behind 2015, as you would expect. So that's our next step. And so, it will be continually tweaking this process so that we improve it as much as we can.
Jeffrey, I mean, I know we're in the 2006 and we've talked about this in past council meetings, the cost and the expense of upgrading the building codes and the cost and process of training those new building codes.
Yep.
They're all immense.
Yep.
And extraordinary. But that being said, we can't wait on this much longer because we're illegitimizing ourselves. And the other concern that I have, though, is, I mean, if we're jumping to 2015 and you're said already that there's a 2018 and we're just now starting 2021, I mean, should we go for gusto and just get up there? Because, I mean, it sounds like we're going to be in the same boat with after all the expense if we're just going to 2015. I really would like to see our council and our staff look into getting us as up to date as possible. Because if we're going to spend the money and time, let's do it once. Let's not do it twice with a double expenditure and a double training process.
And right now we don't know the answer to that question, Councilwoman. And certainly that is one of the things that we're going to look at is what is that cost and what is that difference? And so that we have a much better idea of both of those things so that we can come back with an intelligent plan.
Okay.
If I can ask when that number is being gathered, if we can have a scope of what we stand to lose with that, I think it helps everyone, especially when we're discussing these things on open platforms, that there's costs with not having these codes up to date. Like we stand to lose money, property values go down, etc. And if we could have a scope of that, it makes that number, that cost, a lot less painful.
Sure.
Well, it's also a cost.
Sure.
It's a cost of law.
Okay, Apollo.
One last thing, I'm sorry, guys.
That's okay.
Bailey was, I'm gonna put him on the spot. Bailey was super nervous today to present to the council. And he and I
wouldn't say super nervous.
we had a really good conversation this afternoon, and I knew that he was gonna be ready, after talking to him. So I just wanted to say outstanding job, young man, and thank the council for being here tonight.
Yes.
You did a great job.
And Bailey, whatever they said about me, it wasn't true. Don't worry. I don't give people hard times.
Okay.
Thank you for the presentation. It was
Thank you,
excellent.
Bailey.
Thank you, Bailey.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Any more comments? If not, I'm seeking a motion in a second to adjourn the meeting. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay.
was-
Councilwoman Barrow, she motioned. Councilman Fry seconded. Are you ready to vote? You have any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Bye.
Any opposed, say no. Okay, the ayes have it. Meeting is adjourned. We have about 5 minutes. Please do not forget to
Thank you.
go to the next link, okay?
Or use the bathroom.
Okay.
It's bio break.